My wife brought her study partner on the romantic getaway that was supposed to salvage the wreckage of our 10-year marriage. And when I finally stopped being a coward and checked her phone, I realized that the woman I had shared a bed with for a decade was not just a stranger. She was an executioner who had been sharpening the blade for months. Hindsight is a cruel thing. It takes all the red flags that looked like ordinary coincidences and stitches them into a banner of humiliation that you have to wrap yourself in for the rest of your life. I stood there in the dark living room of a rental cabin, the glow of her screen illuminating my trembling hands, and I wished I could go back to being the blind, trusting fool I was just an hour ago. But the truth is, like a bullet, once it's fired, there is no unpulling the trigger. My name is Arthur, and I am 38 years old. I work as a forensic structural engineer in Boston. My entire career is built on analyzing stress fractures, load-bearing capacities, and identifying the exact moment a building loses its integrity and collapses. It is a bitter, cosmic joke that while I spent my days calculating the breaking points of steel and concrete, I completely missed the catastrophic structural failure of my own home. My wife, Vanessa, was, or is, a senior acquisitions manager for a boutique investment firm. She deals in high stakes, aggressive negotiations, and the art of the deal. She is beautiful in a sharp, intimidating way. Dark hair, eyes that can switch from warm to glacial in a microsecond, and a work ethic that borders on pathological. We were the power couple our friends envied. We lived in a restored brownstone in Back Bay. We vacationed in St. Bart's. We had a wine cellar that cost more than my first car. We didn't have children. Vanessa always said her career was her baby, and I, perhaps selfishly, enjoyed having her all to myself. Or so I thought. Our life was a series of synchronized calendars and shared ambitions. We were a team. Until 6 months ago, when Vanessa decided she needed an executive MBA to break through the glass ceiling at her firm. That was when the study partner entered the narrative. His name was Tobias. The first time she mentioned him, it was with a roll of her eyes. "There's this kid in my cohort, Tobias," she said, over takeout Thai food one Tuesday. "He's 26, a tech whiz, but absolutely clueless about management theory. I have to carry him through this group project." "Sounds annoying," I had said, barely looking up from my blueprints. "He's useful for the data mining, though," she added. "He's got energy." Slowly, Tobias migrated from being an annoyance to a necessity, and then to a fixture. He wasn't a person. He was a presence in our conversations. Tobias sent me this article. "Tobias thinks we should pivot the strategy." I'm on a call with Tobias. Keep it down. I Googled him once. He looked harmless. A scruffy, hipster type with a beanie and a startup vibe. Not a threat to me. A man who wore tailored suits and dealt with the realities of physics. I was secure. I was the husband. He was just a schoolmate. The distance between Vanessa and me didn't happen all at once. It was a slow freeze. It started with the phone. Vanessa used to leave her phone on the kitchen island, face up, charging. We knew each other's passcodes. It was 10/24, our anniversary. Then one day, I saw her phone face down on the nightstand. When I picked it up to move it, she snapped. "Don't touch that," she barked, snatching it from my hand. "I was just putting it on the charger, Ness," I said, startled. "I have confidential client data on there now," she said, her voice tight. "Compliance rules. If you mess up the two-factor authentication, I get locked out. Just leave it alone." Later, I noticed the passcode had changed. 6 digits now. "New security protocol," she explained before I could even ask, applying her night cream with aggressive strokes. "The firm is paranoid about leaks. Then came the wardrobe. Vanessa had always dressed corporately, pencil skirts, silk blouses. But suddenly, her study sessions required a new look. She started wearing designer jeans that hugged her hips, lower-cut tops, and perfume. Not the subtle floral scent she wore for work, but a heavier, muskier fragrance she used to wear on our date nights. "You're dressing up for the library?" I asked one Saturday morning as she put on diamond earrings. "We're meeting at a co-working space in Seaport, Arthur," she sighed, looking at me in the mirror with exhaustion. "Networking is part of the MBA. You have to look successful to be successful. Stop analyzing everything. You're acting like a jealous teenager." That was her new favorite weapon, the accusation of insecurity. If I asked why she was home 2 hours late, I was suffocating her. If I asked why she took her phone into the bathroom for a 20-minute shower, I was invading her privacy. I began to feel like the crazy one. I started second-guessing my own intuition. Maybe I was just stressed. Maybe I was projecting. She was working hard for us, for our future. And here I was, being a suspicious, unsupportive husband. The intimacy evaporated. When I reached for her in bed, she was a statue. "I'm stressed. I feel gross. My back hurts." The rejection was physical. She would flinch if my hand brushed her leg. Yet she would spend hours texting, a small, secret smile playing on her lips that would vanish the moment I entered the room. By November, the silence in our house was deafening. I decided we needed a reset, a Hail Mary pass. I booked a high-end, secluded cabin in Vermont for a long weekend. No Wi-Fi or spotty Wi-Fi, a hot tub, a fireplace, snow. Just us. I wanted to remind her who we were. When I presented the tickets, she didn't smile. She looked cornered. "Arthur, I can't," she said, pacing the living room. "I have the final capstone project due on Monday. It's 50% of the grade. If I don't nail this, the whole MBA is a wash." "Bring the work," I pleaded. "We'll drive up. You work during the day. I'll read, I'll cook. We'll just be in the same space, away from the city." She chewed her lip, thinking rapidly. Then she looked at me with a mix of pity and calculation. "Okay, but I can't do the modeling alone. It's a two-person job. Tobias has the software on his server. We need to be on the same local network to merge the files." I stared at the screen. "You want to bring Tobias to our anniversary getaway?" "He won't be with us, Arthur," she laughed, a brittle, sharp sound. "He'll stay in the guest loft. We will work for 10 hours a day, and then he'll disappear into his headphones. It's strictly logistical, unless you want me to fail." I caved. I caved because I was desperate to be close to her, even if it meant sharing the air with a 26-year-old student. I told myself it showed I was supportive, mature. The drive up was a humiliation I will never forget. I drove my SUV. Vanessa sat in the passenger seat, but her body was turned entirely toward the back seat where Tobias sat. Tobias was not the scruffy kid I expected. He was lean, handsome in a jagged way, with intense eyes and a confidence that swallowed the space in the car. He didn't call me Sir or Mr. Thorne. He called me Artie. "So, Artie," Vanessa says, "you look at cracks in concrete all day. Riveting stuff," he smirked, kicking the back of my seat. "It keeps buildings from killing people," I said tightly, gripping the steering wheel. "Drama," Tobias chuckled. He leaned forward, whispering something to Vanessa. She giggled, a girly, high-pitched giggle I hadn't heard in years. They spent the next 3 hours speaking in code, inside jokes about professors, shared coffees, memes I didn't understand. I was the chauffeur. We arrived at the cabin as the sun was setting. It was beautiful, a glass and timber structure nestled in the pines. Tobias immediately claimed the downstairs couch, throwing his expensive leather duffel bag on it. "Nice dig, Artie. Bit rustic, but the Wi-Fi is decent," he said, checking his phone. "I'm going to start dinner," I said, looking at Vanessa. "Wine?" "Coffee," she said, not making eye contact. "We need to pull an all-nighter. Sorry, babe. You go ahead and eat." I ate a steak alone at the kitchen island while they sat on the floor by the fireplace, laptops open, papers strewn everywhere. They were close, physically close, their shoulders brushed. At one point, Tobias pointed at her screen, his hand lingering on her wrist. Vanessa didn't pull away. She leaned into him. "That's brilliant, Toby," she murmured. I washed the dishes with aggressive clatter. They didn't notice. Around 11 p.m., I couldn't take it anymore. "I'm going to bed," I announced. "Night, honey," Vanessa said, typing furiously. "Don't wait up. We're in the flow." Tobias looked up, his eyes gleaming in the firelight. "Sleep tight, Artie." I went upstairs to the master loft. I lay in the cold bed, listening. I heard the tap-tap-tap of keyboards. Then, the tapping stopped. I heard the clink of glass. Were they drinking? She said she wanted coffee. I drifted into a fitful, shallow sleep, plagued by dreams of buildings collapsing around me, the support beams turning to dust. I woke up with a start. The room was freezing. The digital clock read 2:47 a.m. The space beside me was empty. The sheets were cold. She hadn't come to bed. A sick feeling, heavy and hot, settled in my stomach. I told myself she fell asleep on the couch. I told myself they were just working late. I got out of bed, barefoot, and crept to the railing of the loft that overlooked the living room. The living room was dark. The fire had died down to embers. The laptops were closed on the coffee table. "Vanessa," I whispered. Silence. I went down the stairs. The floorboards were cold. I checked the guest room where Tobias was supposed to sleep. Empty. The bed hadn't been touched. Panic began to claw at my throat. I looked toward the back of the cabin, where the sliding glass doors led to the deck and the hot tub. The steam was rising in thick plumes against the winter night. I walked to the glass door. Through the condensation, I saw them. They weren't working. They weren't discussing market caps. Vanessa was in the water, her back to me, her head resting on the edge of the tub. Tobias was in front of her. They were kissing. Not a tentative, drunken kiss. It was a hungry, possessive devouring. Her hands were in his hair. His hands were everywhere. I stood there, paralyzed. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was a total recalibration of reality. The gaslighting, the lies, the "you're insecure," it all crashed down on me. I wasn't crazy. I was just blind. My first instinct was to open the door and scream, to drag him out of the water and beat him. But the engineer in me took over, the part of me that documents evidence before declaring a building condemned. I needed proof. If I confronted them now, she would spin it. She would say, I misunderstood. She would lie. I turned back to the living room. I saw her phone lying on the coffee table, plugged into a portable charger. I picked it up. My hands were shaking so violently, I almost dropped it. The screen lit up. Locked. I knew the old code didn't work. I knew her birthday didn't work. I looked out the window at them. Tobias. I remembered something from the car ride. He had made a stupid joke about his lucky number. The jersey number he wore in college lacrosse. 22, and Vanessa's favorite number was 8. It was a long shot, a desperate guess. 2208. Nothing. I tried one more thing. The date they met. I remembered her telling me about the orientation day because she had missed our dinner date for it. August 15th, 0815. The lock icon at the top of the screen clicked open. I didn't go to photos. I went to texts. I saw a pinned conversation at the top. The contact name wasn't Tobias. It was saved as Future. I opened it. And as I scrolled up, past the sexts, past the nudes taken in my own bathroom, I found a text sent 2 days ago that stopped my heart. It wasn't about sex. It was about me. Tobias. Is he actually going to sign the papers? Vanessa. He doesn't know about the papers yet. I need him to sign the transfer of the deed for the beach house first. He thinks it's for tax purposes. Once I have that, and the joint account is drained for the tuition, we drop the bomb. Just play nice this weekend, baby. We are almost free. I stared at the screen. This wasn't just an affair. This was a heist. I looked up at the window. They were laughing now, unaware that the ghost in the living room had just woken up. I hit export chat. The game was on. The export bar on the screen moved with agonizing slowness, a thin blue line measuring the countdown to the end of my life as I knew it. My thumb hovered over the screen, ensuring it didn't dim, while my eyes darted between the phone and the fogged glass of the sliding door. Outside, the laughter had subsided into low, rhythmic sounds that made my stomach churn with a violence I hadn't thought possible. They were right there, 10 yards away, celebrating their victory over the boring engineer who paid for their champagne. I read more as the files uploaded to my private cloud. It wasn't just the money, it was the contempt. Vanessa. He tried to touch me last night. It made my skin crawl. I just imagined your hands and got through it. Tobias. Don't worry, babe. Once we flip that beach house, we're in Tulum. Let him rot in his spreadsheets. They had mocked everything. My work, my body, my family. They had dissected my character and found it wanting, laughing at my expense while eating my food. The file transfer hit 100%. Export complete. I carefully wiped the screen with my sleeve to remove fingerprints. I placed the phone back on the coffee table, angling it exactly as it had been, parallel to the edge of a coaster, charging cable slightly twisted to the left. The engineer in me took over completely now. The emotional Arthur was screaming, curled up in a fetal position in the corners of my mind. But the professional Arthur, the man who inspects the wreckage of collapsed bridges, was in the driver's seat. I didn't scream. I didn't smash the glass. I moved like a ghost. I went back upstairs. I packed my bag in silence. I took everything. My toothbrush, my charger, the book I hadn't started. I made the bed on my side, smoothing the sheets so it looked as if I had never been there. I wanted to erase myself from the equation physically, just as they had erased me emotionally. Then, I went to the kitchen. I opened the fridge. I took the steaks I had marinating for tomorrow. I took the 3 bottles of vintage Cabernet I had brought. I took the expensive cheese. I packed it all into the cooler. Petty, perhaps, but I wasn't going to leave them a crumb of my existence to enjoy. I looked at the car keys on the counter, my Land Rover keys. I also saw the keys to the rental cabin on the hook. I took both. I slipped out the front door, the cold mountain air biting my face, drying the sweat of panic that had broken out on my forehead. I walked to the SUV, opened the trunk quietly, and loaded my gear. Before I got in, I walked around to the side of the house, staying in the shadows. I could see the steam rising from the hot tub. I could hear Vanessa's voice, soft and breathy. I love you, Toby. We're going to have such an amazing life. You're the queen, V. We're unstoppable. I got into the car. I didn't turn on the headlights. I released the parking brake and let the heavy vehicle roll down the inclined driveway, the gravel crunching softly under the tires, masked by the hum of the hot tub jets. Only when I was around the bend, out of sight of the cabin, did I ignite the engine. The roar of the V8 felt like a declaration of war. I drove. I drove for an hour through the winding Vermont roads until I hit the highway and saw the first sign of cell service. I pulled over into a rest stop, the engine idling. My hands were gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles were white. It was 4:15 a.m. I pulled out my phone. Step 1, Wells Fargo app, joint checking. Balance, $64,000. Transfer, $32,000 to my personal savings account, which she couldn't access. Step 2, joint savings. Balance, $180,000. Transfer, $90,000 to my personal account. Step 3, credit cards. American Express Platinum, the one she used for everything. Status, report lost, stolen. Immediate freeze, Visa signature. Status, report lost at stolen. Immediate freeze. I sat there in the dark cab, watching the notifications pop up. Transfer successful, card frozen. I then opened my email and composed a message to our family lawyer, a man Vanessa hated because he was too aggressive. I attached the zip file of the chat logs, the photos, and the video. Subject, divorce, adultery, attempted fraud, immediate action required. I hit send. Then, I blocked Vanessa's number. I blocked Tobias's number. I had found it in the group chat. I put the car in drive and headed back to Boston. I didn't hear from her for 12 hours. I assumed the realization hit them around 10 a.m., when they finally crawled out of bed, hungover and hungry, to find the kitchen empty, the car gone, and the cabin keys missing. They were stranded in a remote cabin, 5 miles from the nearest town, in freezing temperatures, with no vehicle. And when they tried to call an Uber, card declined. When they tried to order food, card declined. I was sitting in our living room in Back Bay when she finally arrived. It was 8 p.m. She must have had to pay cash for a taxi or beg someone for a ride to the bus station. I had spent the day changing the locks. I had called a locksmith at 7 a.m. The new keys were heavy and reassuring in my pocket. I heard the keys scratch against the lock. It didn't turn. Scratch, rattle, pause. Then the doorbell rang. Once, twice, then a frantic pounding. "Arthur, open this goddamn door! Arthur!" I opened the door. Vanessa stood there. She looked like a wreck. Her hair was matted, her mascara smeared. She was wearing the same clothes as yesterday. Behind her stood Tobias, looking significantly less confident than he had in the hot tub. He was shivering in his leather jacket, carrying their bags. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Vanessa screamed, pushing past me into the foyer. "You left us. You stole the car. Do you know how long it took us to get back? My cards aren't working, Arthur. I had to borrow cash from Tobias. Are you insane?" She was playing the offense. It was impressive, really. Even caught red-handed, she was trying to bully me into submission. I leaned against the door frame, crossing my arms. I looked at Tobias. "You're not coming in," I said calmly. "Excuse me?" Tobias stepped forward, trying to summon some alpha energy. "Listen, man, you can't just leave people in the woods. That's criminal negligence. And sleeping with another man's wife in his own rental property while planning to embezzle his assets. What do we call that, Tobias? Gross misconduct? Fraud?" The color drained from Vanessa's face so fast it looked like a physical blow. She froze in the middle of the hallway. What are you talking about?" she whispered. "I know, Vanessa," I said. My voice was flat, dead. "I know about Tobias. I know about the study sessions. I know about the beach house deed you wanted me to sign. I know you think I'm boring. I know I make your skin crawl." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. Then the tears started. Not the ugly, gasping tears of true grief, but the pretty, cinematic tears she used to get out of speeding tickets. "Arthur, no. You misunderstood," she stammered, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. It was a mistake. One time, we got drunk. I was confused. The stress of the MBA. You were so distant. I felt lonely." "Stop," I cut her off. "I have the chat logs, Vanessa. Project Alpha? Future? You've been planning this for 6 months. You weren't lonely. You were greedy." I walked over to the side table, where I had placed a manila envelope. "Here." I tossed it at her feet. "What is this?" she asked, trembling. "These are the divorce papers. My lawyer drafted them up this afternoon. He's very efficient. Also, you'll find a printout of the text where you discuss draining the accounts. That's going to be Exhibit A if you try to fight the prenup or ask for alimony. Attempted financial fraud is a felony, Ness. If you push me, I will press charges." Vanessa looked at the envelope, then at me. Her face contorted. The mask of the victim slipped, revealing the viper underneath. "You bastard," she hissed. "You checked my phone? You invaded my privacy?" "You invaded my life," I retorted. "Get out." "This is my house too," she shrieked. "Actually, no. I bought this place before we met. The deed is in my name. You have residency rights until the divorce is finalized, but I have a restraining order against him." I pointed at Tobias, who was lingering on the porch, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. "And since you clearly can't function without your partner, I suggest you go with him." Vanessa turned to Tobias, her eyes wild. "Toby, tell him. Tell him we're leaving." Tobias looked at the opulent foyer, then at me, and finally at Vanessa, who was now a hysterical broke woman with a potential lawsuit hanging over her head. He took a step back. "Whoa, V," Tobias said, holding up his hands. "You said he was clueless. You said the money was sorted. I can't be involved in a legal battle. I'm on a student visa, okay? I can't have a record." "What?" Vanessa stared at him. "Toby, what are you saying?" "I'm saying this is too much drama," Tobias said. He looked at me. "Sorry, man. I didn't know the full story. She told me you guys were basically separated." He dropped her bag on the porch steps. "I'm out. Don't call me." He turned and walked away, down the steps of the brownstone, disappearing into the Boston night without looking back. Vanessa stood there, shattered. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. She looked at the door where her future had just walked out, then back at me. She slumped against the wall, sliding down until she was sitting on the floor, weeping. This time, it sounded real. It sounded like someone realizing they had bet the house on a losing hand. "Arthur," she sobbed. "Please, he was nothing. He manipulated me. Please, let's talk. We can fix this. I love you." I looked down at her. I remembered the woman I had married. I remembered the vows. But then I remembered the text. "Let him rot in his spreadsheets." "You don't love me, Vanessa," I said. "You love the lifestyle I provide. And sadly for you, the bank is closed." I picked up her bag that Tobias had dropped and tossed it out the door. "You can stay at a hotel. I've unblocked the credit card for exactly 1 hour, enough to pay for a room at the Motel 6. After that, you're on your own." "Arthur, please." She grabbed my ankle. I shook her off. "Get out," I said, my voice rising for the first time. "Before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing, you have 10 seconds. She scrambled up, grabbing the envelope and her bag. She looked at me one last time, her face a mask of ruined mascara and hatred. "You'll regret this," she spat. "You'll be alone, Arthur. You're a sad, lonely man." Maybe, I said, beginning to close the heavy oak door. But I'll be a sad, lonely man with a beach house, a clean conscience, and a structural integrity you never possessed. I slammed the door. I threw the deadbolt. I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening to her scream obscenities from the sidewalk, and then finally, the sound of her heels clicking away into the darkness. The house was quiet. It was empty. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore. It was cleansing. It was the silence of a building that had been stripped down to the studs, ready for a renovation. I went into the kitchen, opened a bottle of the Cabernet I had rescued from the cabin, and poured a glass. I took a sip. It tasted like iron and earth. It tasted like the truth. I sat down at the island, opened my laptop, and pulled up the spreadsheet for the beach house renovation. Delete column, Vanessa's studio. Insert row, home gym. I deleted the contact wife from my phone. I took a deep breath. The structure had held. The foundation was cracked, yes, but it was still standing. And tomorrow, the rebuilding would begin.